There are moments that begin so quietly they barely seem worthy of a second thought. A routine drive home. A quick stop at a shopping center. A phone call lasting only a few seconds. Then, without warning, an ordinary evening becomes the kind of mystery that leaves an entire community searching for answers for years. It began with a desperate emergency call that investigators would replay countless times, hoping to discover something they had missed. A frightened young woman struggled to keep her voice steady as she whispered into her phone, "I think someone has been following me." Before the dispatcher could ask another question, the line went dead. No scream. No goodbye. Only silence. That silence would become the beginning of one of the most debated missing person investigations in recent American history, a case that filled television broadcasts, newspapers, online forums, and dinner table conversations with theories that often distracted people from the truth. What happened next would challenge assumptions, expose dangerous misconceptions, and reveal how easily public opinion can focus on the wrong details, while the real threat quietly slips away unnoticed. When officers reached the last location connected to the emergency call, they expected to find a frightened driver waiting for help. Instead, they found an abandoned parking lot sitting almost perfectly still beneath the glow of streetlights. A lone vehicle remained with its driver's door slightly open, as though someone had stepped out only moments earlier. Nearby lay a torn pair of fashionable designer cargo pants that had recently become popular across social media. At first glance, they appeared to be nothing more than discarded clothing. Yet investigators quickly realized they could become one of the most misunderstood pieces of evidence in the entire case. As news spread, television commentators, bloggers, and strangers online began arguing over what the young woman had been wearing instead of asking the question that truly mattered. Why had someone been following her in the first place? While public attention drifted toward endless debates about appearance, detectives quietly discovered evidence suggesting someone had carefully observed her movements long before that emergency call was ever made. Security cameras collected from nearby businesses painted a confusing picture. A young professional, whom we will call Emily Parker, had spent her afternoon exactly as thousands of Americans do every weekend. She browsed several stores, stopped for coffee, answered a work message, smiled politely at a cashier, and walked through crowded sidewalks filled with shoppers carrying bags and talking on their phones. Nothing about her behavior suggested fear. Nothing indicated she believed danger was only a few steps behind. Yet hidden among hours of surveillance footage was a man who appeared again and again, always remaining just far enough away to avoid attracting attention. His face never appeared clearly enough for investigators to identify him, but his movements raised immediate concern. He entered stores without making purchases, lingered near exits, and repeatedly appeared wherever Emily happened to go. Whether coincidence or careful planning, detectives could not ignore the pattern. The deeper they looked, the more they realized that what many people dismissed as ordinary background activity might actually hold the key to everything that followed. News stations across the country quickly transformed the disappearance into headline material. Photographs of Emily appeared beside bold captions asking viewers if they had seen her. Interviews with worried relatives filled evening broadcasts. Reporters stood outside shopping centers repeating the same limited facts while speculation spread faster than verified information. Some people insisted she had chosen to disappear voluntarily. Others believed she had become the victim of a random crime. Still others focused almost entirely on the clothing found near her vehicle, allowing assumptions to replace evidence. Detectives, however, refused to reach conclusions without proof. They knew that real investigations are rarely solved by the loudest opinions. They are solved by patient observation, overlooked details, and questions nobody else thinks to ask. Somewhere within hundreds of hours of surveillance recordings, witness statements, digital records, and forensic reports was the answer that everyone had been searching for. The challenge was separating facts from distractions before valuable time disappeared forever. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Over the next few minutes, we'll retrace every confirmed movement, examine the evidence investigators believed mattered most, and uncover how a case that many people thought they understood turned out to be far more complex than anyone imagined. As detectives reconstructed Emily's final known hours, they uncovered a series of small decisions, overlooked encounters, and hidden connections that completely changed the direction of the investigation. The real reason she vanished had nothing to do with fashion, public opinion, or internet debates. It had everything to do with someone who had been watching, waiting, and choosing the perfect moment to make a move without anyone realizing what was unfolding right in front of them. The first breakthrough did not come from a dramatic confession or a hidden witness. It came from something investigators had nearly overlooked. Hours of security footage from the shopping center showed a tall man entering the mall less than 5 minutes after Emily Parker walked through the front entrance. At first, there was nothing particularly unusual about him. He wore ordinary clothing, carried no shopping bags, and moved with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Yet as detectives replayed the recordings frame by frame, one detail became impossible to ignore. He never entered a checkout line. He never stopped to compare prices. He never made a purchase. Instead, he wandered slowly from one store to another, pausing just long enough to observe the people around him before quietly moving on. To the average shopper, he blended into the crowd. To experienced investigators reviewing the footage days later, his behavior suggested something very different. He wasn't shopping. He was watching. What made the recordings even more unsettling was that Emily was not the only person he appeared to notice. Several times he seemed to trail other women through different sections of the shopping center, maintaining enough distance to avoid drawing attention, while remaining close enough to monitor where they went. In one recording, he stood outside a clothing boutique for nearly 10 minutes without ever stepping inside. Moments later, after Emily exited the same store carrying a shopping bag, the man casually adjusted his direction and continued walking behind her. Another camera captured him pretending to study a promotional display while repeatedly glancing toward her reflection in a nearby window. Nothing he did was illegal. Nothing was dramatic enough to alarm the people passing by. But when detectives assembled every camera angle into a complete timeline, the pattern became difficult to dismiss. It was as though he had entered the shopping center with a purpose that had nothing to do with buying anything at all. Store employees would later tell detectives that the man had spoken to several workers during the afternoon, but his questions were unusual. Instead of asking about products or prices, he wanted to know when certain employees finished their shifts, whether security guards regularly patrolled the parking lots, and which exit shoppers typically used during busy weekends. At the time, none of those conversations seemed suspicious. Retail workers answer hundreds of questions every day, and his calm, friendly manner gave them little reason to remember him. Only after Emily disappeared did those brief encounters take on new significance. One employee recalled that he seemed far more interested in watching customers than looking at merchandise. Another remembered him standing near the entrance for several minutes, appearing to wait for someone rather than browse the store. Individually, these memories seemed insignificant. Together, they painted the picture of a man carefully gathering information without attracting attention. As investigators quietly pieced these details together, the public conversation moved in an entirely different direction. Television panels debated Emily's clothing. Online comment sections filled with arguments about personal responsibility, fashion trends, and opinions from people who had never met her. Social media users analyzed photographs, criticized decisions they believed she had made, and confidently offered theories unsupported by evidence. The discussion became so widespread that many people overlooked the facts detectives considered far more important. While millions argued over what Emily had been wearing, investigators were becoming increasingly convinced that someone had deliberately selected her long before she ever reached the parking lot. The clothing found near her vehicle had become the center of public attention, but detectives suspected it was distracting everyone from the person who mattered most, the unidentified man who seemed to vanish the moment Emily did. Then, just as investigators prepared to release surveillance images to the public, the mysterious man disappeared from every available camera. His final confirmed appearance showed him walking toward the eastern side of the shopping complex before moving beyond the reach of surveillance coverage. No camera captured him leaving in a vehicle. No witness could confidently describe where he went next. It was as though he had blended into the afternoon crowd and simply ceased to exist. Detectives searched nearby businesses for additional recordings, interviewed employees, and reviewed traffic cameras leading away from the shopping district, but every new lead ended the same way. The man remained unidentified, and with every passing hour the likelihood of finding Emily safely grew smaller. Investigators understood that somewhere within the thousands of pieces of evidence already collected, one overlooked detail was waiting to connect the missing pieces of the puzzle. That detail arrived from a place no one expected. During a second examination of Emily's shopping bags, an evidence technician noticed that one receipt had become wedged deep inside the lining of a paper bag. It had escaped everyone's attention during the initial search because it had folded itself beneath the cardboard base. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary purchase receipt, but printed near the bottom was something detectives had not seen before, a timestamp that conflicted with the timeline they believed was accurate. More importantly, it contained information that suggested Emily had made one final stop after leaving the clothing store, a stop that had never been mentioned by witnesses and had never appeared in the original reconstruction of her movements. That forgotten receipt would force investigators to question everything they thought they knew about her final hours, because it proved the person following Emily may have had far more time to watch her than anyone had ever imagined. The forgotten receipt helped investigators reconstruct the final confirmed hour of Emily Parker's movements with remarkable precision. After leaving the shopping center, she did not drive straight home as everyone had first assumed. Instead, she stopped at a small coffee shop just a few miles away, a place she had visited often enough that several employees recognized her almost immediately when detectives later showed them her photograph. They remembered her ordering the same drink she usually enjoyed after a long day of shopping. She appeared relaxed, exchanged a few friendly words with the barista, and even smiled while checking a message on her phone. Nothing about her behavior suggested she believed she was in danger. Yet security footage from inside the cafe revealed someone else had arrived less than a minute after she walked in. It was the same unidentified man seen throughout the shopping center earlier that afternoon. He purchased nothing. Instead, he selected a seat near the window, opened a paperback book, and appeared to read quietly while occasionally glancing toward Emily whenever she looked away. To anyone passing by, he seemed like an ordinary customer enjoying a peaceful afternoon. Investigators would later conclude that his greatest advantage was how completely ordinary he appeared. When Emily finished her drink and walked back to her vehicle, the man calmly closed his book and exited the cafe only seconds later. Traffic cameras showed two vehicles leaving the parking lot, almost one behind the other. At first there was nothing unusual about the footage. Cars travel the same roads every day. But as detectives expanded their search to additional intersections, the same pattern continued. The distance between the two vehicles remained almost identical through multiple traffic lights and several turns. Emily eventually noticed a pair of headlights lingering behind her longer than seemed normal. According to phone records, she placed a quick call to her closest friend, mentioning with a nervous laugh that she thought someone might be following her. Her friend later told detectives that Emily joked she was probably imagining things and promised she would call again once she arrived home. That second call never came. Only minutes later, every attempt to reach her went straight to voicemail. Her phone had gone silent, her vehicle was eventually discovered abandoned, and lying nearby was the new pair of pants she had purchased earlier that day. Investigators initially considered the possibility that she had walked away voluntarily, but as more evidence surfaced, it became painfully clear that something had interrupted her journey long before she ever had the chance to make it home. Just when investigators believed they had exhausted every possible lead, a routine review of traffic evidence uncovered the breakthrough they had been waiting for. A delivery truck's dashcam, recorded only minutes before Emily disappeared, captured a dark-colored SUV following her vehicle at a consistent distance for several miles. It was the same vehicle that had appeared briefly near the shopping center and again outside the coffee shop. Detectives quickly traced its movements through nearby traffic cameras, but the license plate led to a dead end. It had been cloned from another vehicle registered hundreds of miles away. As search warrants expanded, investigators uncovered several prepaid burner phones, false identities, and evidence suggesting that Emily was not the first person to be quietly monitored in that shopping district. Similar reports from other victims revealed a disturbing pattern. Individuals had been watched, followed, and carefully selected long before they ever realized they were being targeted. The clothing found near Emily's vehicle had never been the reason for what happened. It had merely become a distraction that shifted attention away from a coordinated group of criminals who used crowded public places to identify vulnerable victims without raising suspicion. In an instant, the investigation changed from a single missing person case into the exposure of a much larger criminal operation, and detectives realized they were racing not only to uncover the truth, but to stop the next victim from disappearing. As investigators pulled together the final pieces of evidence, the case took a dramatic turn. The dashcam footage, cloned license plates, burner phones, and recovered digital records all pointed to the same conclusion. Emily had not been targeted because of what she wore. She had been selected by a repeat offender who spent months studying routines, memorizing schedules, and waiting for the right opportunity. Search warrants uncovered maps, victim profiles, and detailed surveillance notes that exposed a carefully planned pattern of stalking. The suspect was finally arrested, but the biggest question remained unanswered until authorities located Emily alive, after she managed to escape captivity, and lead investigators to crucial evidence. In court, her testimony dismantled the false narrative that had dominated public discussion from the beginning. The real lesson was never about clothing. It was about the calculated actions of a predator, and the importance of recognizing suspicious behavior before it is too late. This story reminds us that blame belongs only to those who commit these crimes, while awareness, trusting your instincts, and looking out for one another can save lives. What do you think? Did investigators spend too much time chasing the wrong clues? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to Unspoken Stories for more gripping investigations into mystery, deception, and the search for truth. Next time we'll uncover the unbelievable story of a man who disappeared from an airport while surrounded by hundreds of people, yet not a single camera captured the moment that mattered.